During this era of massive third-party Transformers, Masterpiece Transformers, getting released, we see the likes of Omega Supreme, the Omega Supreme Wars with Fans Toys DX9, Weijing, and now Hasbro throwing their hat in the ring. We see combiners. We see 4 companies fighting out a Minosaur. We see all kinds of other true Masterpiece combiners coming out. But there are bigger ones, and we're going to ask the question today, how big is too big? And we're going to talk about exactly which characters I'm talking about as soon as you press the like button. And you are watching the Titanium Hangar, where we talk about vintage to modern, Star Wars, Transformers, video games, and anything else I want to talk about. And if you're new to the channel, please subscribe, turn on notifications, so you can be the first to watch these great videos. So getting right into it, these are the 5 characters I'm talking about. Got Metroplex, Fortress Maximus, Trypticon, Scorponok, and Unicron. But I want to start with Metroplex. And the reason is because of the scale, because of the Sunbow chart, and this discussion has been had many, many times over. How big should these guys be? Starting with Metroplex. Now, I want to say that I have not put much stock in the Sunbow chart for a lot of reasons, but the main reason is obviously G1 toys did not match this Sunbow chart. So I think this was an afterwards thing. They just kind of pieced together the toy line. We're trying to keep continuity on the cartoon. We're trying to have continuity going forward. Past that, Sunbow chart's here. So, but for this, the reason that I'm going to use a Sunbow chart in this is simply because third-party companies follow this to a T, or they try to. So let's go ahead and use it. And if you look right here, you see that Omega Supreme, who is 2 foot on average from the other third-party competitors, looks so small. What is he, about a quarter to a third, a quarter size of Metroplex? So if you take that and you convert that into feet and all that stuff, that's between 6 to 8 feet, right around there. And that would be a huge transformer for third party to put out, for Hasbro to put out, or anyone to put out. And I have to tell you that I don't know if I'd be on board with a 7, 8, or even a 6 foot Citybot. Now, Hasbro has put out their Generations version of Metroplex at a 2 foot tall figure, highly stylized, looking like IDW, not G1, and it doesn't fit scale wise because he's about the same size as the Omega Supreme options that are out there, and that's not going to work in a collection. Now, I gotta tell you, most collectors out there, I see them have this on their shelf. This is their representation, and I think most collectors are relatively happy about it. But when they stop and think about it, they know it's wrong. I guarantee you, when I bought mine, I love mine, but when I bought it, I knew it just felt as big as it was and as cool as it was, it's still not a Masterpiece representation. Now, we've been given the Make Toys Utopia, and this guy is about a third of the size smaller than the Metroplex that Hasbro gave us in the Generations line. Not going to be big enough. Now, this is a little bit closer to the G1 look, and he looks cool. He's not big enough. So what would be an appropriate size? Well, I'm thinking since the combiners are about 20 inches, Omega Supreme's about 24, 23, 24, about 2 foot, then these guys need to be at least twice the size of, so 4 foot. Now, the question is, 4 foot's still not scale. 4 foot's big enough that it makes sense that they're bigger, but it still won't scale right, and they still won't scale next to other figures. Like an Optimus Prime would look good next to him, but it still isn't going to be a proper, adequate scale. Let's move into Fortress Maximus. So if you look at Fortress Maximus, you're going to see that Fortress Maximus is going by the whole assumption he's the same size as Metroplex, which there's debate on which one's bigger, and because you don't see them on screen together almost at all. But I can tell you that from the standards that are set by Hasbro and what they've released, and the standards that I guess we've all come to agree with, is that they're about the same size, and that all of these guys are about the same size. We're gonna say same size as Metroplex. So you're looking at, he should stand about 6 to 8 feet tall if you're going to follow Sunbow, and if you're going to match it up. So with that being said, here's another way to look at this. So if you take the Hasbro Titan Returns Cerebros, I think that it looks good. It fits the aesthetic very well. Of course, way too small to be in the Masterpiece line, and that sits atop a 2-foot figure. So if you were to look at Cerebros compared next to, say, Make Toys Headmasters, then you could say that he's about a little bit taller than half the size. So you would need to almost double his size, and almost doubling his size, you'd have to almost double the size of Fortress Maximus, therefore 4 foot. And I would say 4 foot to me would be realistic for producers to make. It would be realistic to produce, realistic, semi-realistic to display, and semi-realistic to be affordable. But again, I have to say semi-realistic. But the Hasbro one looks good in robot mode, a bit lame in all the other modes. But I have to tell you, I see most collectors has this version as their Fortress Maximus. So next up, I want to talk about Trypticon. Now, Trypticon is definitely a big bot. And Hasbro has made, it's like 18 inches. I don't think the one Hasbro made is big enough to compare in the lineup of their Titans. And so all of those big ones are Titans. And this doesn't stack up height-wise. It's an amazing looking figure. Has a couple of cool gimmicks. And is an awesome upgrade to what we got in G1. Still isn't big enough. Now, most collectors do somehow squeeze this in their collection and display it with their Masterpiece stuff or near their Masterpiece stuff, because it is that good, and it's the biggest one we've gotten. Lastly, I want to talk about Scorponok a bit. Now, we've actually gotten a Scorponok that was a Sentinel gigantic Scorponok. This thing is not transformable. It's not a true transformer. And this gets into some other discussions of if it doesn't transform, but it fits the scale, the aesthetic, and the size, and the look. Everything is just great. The articulation, you get it what you want. Would you put this in your Masterpiece collection? Now, this thing's now going for 500 plus. I don't know what the original release amount was probably like 250, 300 or something, because it is so big. It is the 2-foot size, and it fits in with the Titan class, but it's still at 2 foot, not big enough to be to scale. So Unicron is the biggest of all, and Hasbro made their Unicron back in the day with the Armada line, and it was a good Unicron. But we all knew that it was way too small and it didn't scale, but it was nice in a way that we got it. We got one that looked like a Unicron, and I'm not against seeing that thing oversized. Let me tell you, oversize that thing to 4 foot tall or 6 foot tall. That would be an interesting feat. But the thing is, that one in itself is still, it looks good in both modes, doesn't look great in both modes. And there's so much more you could do if you just do your own design. So if they were to do a big one in their own design. But we're going to talk a little more about that one closer to the end. Let's go ahead and talk about problems or issues with making figures this big. So let's say we did make them all 4 foot tall or 6 foot tall. But let's go with 4 foot just to be realistic. The cost. So at a 2 foot tall figure, it's costing for an Omega Supreme anywhere from 300, 350. You've got some 250s with Wei Zhang, or even 215. But the reality is you're looking at 350. Now, double the size, and just go along this mentality. If you double the size, you double the cost. You're looking at $600 to $700. So for $600 to $700, I think you outprice a large majority of the market for one figure. Now, you may say, well, combiners, Fantasy Toys combiners are going to cost $600, and they're only going to be 2 foot tall, so you're really not outpricing them. But a lot of people don't look at Fantasy Toys combiners or any of the combiners as just one figure. Even though they may all be displayed as one figure, they're looked at as 6 independent figures. Now, these would be one figure each, and for $600 or $700, really hard to justify. And what I've been told a lot lately, because I never really noticed this, that most places don't offer a payment plan, and that some, whatever places offer payment plans are going to sell more items, then that's actually kind of an option. But if I was coming to grips with $600 for a combiner, and what made me decide it was okay was someone drop 100 here and there over the course of a year, then the $600 at once is a big issue. So moving into the next, displaying 4 foot tall figures. How's that going to be done? Well, these aren't going to fit in no DTOF. That's for sure. Unless each one gets their own DTOF. And it really doesn't make sense to display them unless they're going to interact with other characters around them. So looking at that, I can think of a couple of very solid display options. Number one, a tabletop display. When I say tabletop display, not a lot of collectors do that. But you can have, well, basically, you're the tabletop full of figures. I've seen several displays like that. I haven't seen a lot. And I can say that it can make for an impressive scene. The other way would make a little more sense would be to have shorter shelves, and the top of the shelf, so you get the 3 foot tall shelves, and then even an 8 foot ceiling, you've got 5 feet there. And so you could do a few things, and you can have a couple of layers and stuff, and you can elevate some characters, so you could put them in a big scene together, the 4 of these guys fighting each other and a couple of others mixed in. That would work too. These are all issues and options. And of course, lastly, making your own custom shelves. Now, you've got to be handy to do that, or you have to pay somebody to do it. I know that I have gone out of my way to make some shelves myself, but then I realized that it's a lot of work, especially if you get your own wood and you stain your own wood and all of that. I mean, it pays off in the end, and I've done that in a couple of cases because I really wanted to display my stuff, and I needed specific heights that no one else manufactured, so I made them myself. And it worked, but it's not the easiest thing to do. So lastly, I want to talk about my predictions, my opinions, and of course, I want to hear about yours. So one of the things I'd like to see is Hasbro to, well, just get a KO oversized version of Hasbro in some cases. So the Fortress Maximus and the Trypticon, I'd like to see them upsized to 4 foot by Wei Zhang or one of those companies, and I know that's not an official solution. I know a lot of people would be like, I don't even want to touch that. But I would personally like to see that. And that is an option. Now, the thing is, we don't have a Scorponok yet, and that would be, Hasbro could put out a Scorponok in the Titan class, and that would make a lot of sense. And they should. That's probably next year's, by the way. Because I predicted Scorponok either this year or next year, but I also predicted them to do Omega Supreme this year or next year, and so this year they did Omega Supreme. So Scorponok next year, hopefully, with your fingers crossed. Metroplex is too stylized to KO oversize, and so there we are. Now, I'd like to see Make Toys do a Fortress Maximus, and here's why. So they've already done the Autobot Headmasters. They've done a good job. They have a reputation, and it would work very well. Along the lines with KOs too, Yes Model seems to get a hold of all their designs and just put them out for half the price. So I don't know, maybe that itself, that Yes Model thing, is slowing down why the other two Headmasters aren't out yet, but who knows. But I think they would do a great job, and I don't think the price would be too ridiculous. I think they would get it in, you know, under the $600 mark, or right around there. And I think they would make a very G1-esque, G1 accurate mold. As for Trypticon and Scorponok, we have seen a couple of attempts, and I would like to see like a Fans Toys or an X-Transbots or one of them go after it. But that, if it's Fans Toys doing it, you're looking at 2025. So it would be nice to see like MMC. MMC did a really good job with their Skylynx, and I don't care what anyone says, it's not too stylized. For a G1 lover, I think that looks G1 on the money for me. It's not exactly, but it veers enough to be interesting. Same thing with Scorponok, and it could be a third-party version of Scorponok. And it would actually, if the third parties do these, I don't think they'd be huge blocky legs. Everything wouldn't be just huge blocks. There would be a lot of small, intricate details to them that would make it more interesting. And then again, got the biggest guy ever. We've got the Unicron, and I don't think Unicron, I always thought he'd be the 4-foot tall guy, and I'm thinking he'd have to be 6. And I don't think he'd ever get made. That was what we all thought HasLab would be, and HasLab 2.0, and it turns out we may be wrong on that. But anyway, let me know what you think, and do you think we should make these, or should we just have some company come out with a shelf that's designed to look like a Metroplex or one of these city bots, and they have hands, fists, fists, a head, and some legs and some decals, and you build your own shelf? A lot of people have done that. Like, subscribe, Tydarium Hanger, out.